This podcast is a member of the Voices of Wrestling Podcasting Network. Visit voicesofwrestling.com to hear the rest of our great podcasts, as well as show reviews, columns, opinions, and updates across the world of wrestling.
In today's show, wrestling fans, we have one piece of viewer mail, which we will go over you. Some thoughts about tonight's episode of Dynamite. A brief celebration of our 5th episode and some thoughts about the show going forward, what you can expect. And as you know, that you'll get every week, we have the words of wisdom and another exciting musical number coming up for you in a bit. Welcome in today to you're listening to The Next Pillar, your AEW podcast, where we bring you a balanced blend of entertainment and insight inspired by the latest goings-on in All Elite Wrestling. There's plenty of ways to support the show, and I'm sure you can find them. You can find me on Twitter at BlakeOnWax, find us at all social media at The Next Pillar, and please do send us any thoughts, concerns, or ideas that you have just about the show. Just to our email, nextpillaraew@gmail.com. More on that later, too. So today, folks, it's our 5th episode, and things are coming into focus about just where we want to take the show. We'll have a new weekly segment that will debut today called AEW From A to Z, where I'll be breaking down literally every aspect of this company, starting with a special episode next week. You know, typically, I try to keep things around the half-hour mark just because I know there's a lot of kind of longer podcasts out there. I'm kind of just trying to keep things pretty short here. Eventually, the show will have a bit of an interview and will be about an hour, 45 minutes to an hour. Next week, we'll have a special long episode, though, just debuting this new A to Z segment. I'll actually be giving at least a sentence on every wrestler that is currently on the AEW roster, so don't miss that. We'll just go literally just from A to Z, every single wrestler currently in the company, and again, we'll be doing that next week, and from there, we'll move on and talk about kind of literally every aspect of AEW, from the announcers, the talent, the pay-per-views, everything. We'll just go through literally every aspect of AEW. Above all else, for me, I'm wanting this show to feel like a conversation. There's lots of reviews shows out there where you kind of just sit and listen to someone review something that you've probably already seen. I wanted to do something a little bit different with this show, and I'm really wanting each and every show to feel more like a conversation, kind of like that we're just kind of hanging out. Maybe you've come over to watch an episode of Dynamite. I've got the grandma pizza in the oven. You got to do the grandma pizza if you haven't tried it. It's a great way to make pizza at home. Here we are, we're just kind of shooting the breeze, so to speak, about, what's going on with AEW. So kind of, maybe being a little bit less myopic about the week-to-week goings-on in terms of, what's this angle doing? Like, who's this angle helping? Like, let's talk about this match. More of like a general kind of like, what is this company and where is it going and what do we think about it kind of dialogue is what I'm wanting to make for the show. And so to do that, I'm going to need your help. We had a bit of an issue this week in that just for the listener mail, actually only had one email for listener mail this week. We'll be getting to that here in just a bit. And so, I am hoping that just more of you folks can send us, ideas for segments, questions, concerns, anything. Again, that's nextpillaraew@gmail.com. And you can find us, on Twitter, nextpillaraew, Facebook, Instagram. We're on all those things. you can come find us, and please do email us, because to just have this one email here, it is a little bit deflating. I can't lie. But I did like this email, which is why I wanted to read it on air. It's actually, this was really surprising to me, just that we had one email, and this one email is about Shane McMahon, who I did not really expect to be talking about on air really at all when I started doing this show. So yeah, here's her listener mail of the week here from Rick F. Wait a minute, is that Ric Flair? Did Ric Flair email me? No. It's got a K in it. That's how I know. That's how I know it's not Ric Flair. Because of the K at the end of the Rick. Obviously, that's not how Ric Flair spells his name. Anyway, has some nice things to say about the show. Mentions the music. We will have some more music later in the show here. And again, it'll be a thing where when you tune into the show, you know you're going to get some piece of insane audio, whether it's music or a sound collage or who knows. I have some pretty big things in the works. I'm pretty stoked on it. You'll hear at least one piece of insane audio. You'll hear about kind of the latest big AEW stories. And you'll also kind of hear me just kind of like giving some general thoughts about just the direction that AEW is headed in and its impact on the wrestling world at large. So anyway, there will be more music later. Rick F. asks here, let's see here. What about, for Tony's big surprise tonight, what about Shane McMahon? Imagine a better way for Tony to one-up Vince McMahon than having his own son come on Dynamite and trash the company. So thanks for sending that in. Again, from Rick F. I did want to give this a fair amount of consideration, just since it's kind of the only email on the docket here. So yeah, let's take a minute here to really think about this and kind of like follow it to its logical conclusion, you know? I remember that day in 2001 when Shane was on Nitro, WCW Nitro. It was before I got the internet in like 2002. This was like 2001, obviously. But most of my friends at high school had it, including my friend Matt, who also followed wrestling very closely. And so I remember, it was maybe like 5:30 here Pacific time. I got a call from him on the landline. This was back when your friend wouldn't have a cell phone. So, I'm sure had to ask his mom to use the phone to call me and tell me this. Just that at that point, and he knew this, I was watching WCW much in the same way that I like currently watch WWE, which is like, I kind of just pay attention to the pay-per-view each month. And maybe I'll tune in if there's a match that I'm interested in on the weekly shows. That's kind of how I was with WCW. And so when my friend Matt said, hey man, so, cause I'm going into more details than you folks need, but, he would often let me know, just since he actually had the internet and could see what was happening on Nitro. He would often let me know, when I should watch Nitro, when he knew there would be something I would be interested in. And so obviously, Shane McMahon leading off that broadcast was one of those things that he called me about. And I remember just how surreal that was, because at that point, I think all of us as wrestling fans, like, we knew that WCW, that things were not good. I think at that time, it really was inconceivable to at least most people that I knew, most people I was reading, just the idea that WCW would be no more and the WWE would be the only game in town. That's something that seemed inconceivable at that time. And so to see Shane McMahon, again on Nitro was surreal. I think seeing Shane McMahon in, 21 years later showing up on Dynamite, I think that would be even more surreal and would really be a pretty crazy moment. So obviously, would it make a splash bringing, Shane McMahon on Dynamite? Absolutely. Of course it was. It would pop a rating. It would make them the talk of the industry for a week. But would it really lead to anything that worthwhile? So let's just say, like, you tune into Dynamite. It turns out that Tony's big announcement is Shane McMahon. Let's just, for the sake of this argument, let's just say they never said the thing about the Face of the Revolution ladder match situation. Let's just say that Shane McMahon actually does, just show up on Dynamite, you know that JR would have that like Simba reference at the ready. Like, you know, he's been waiting to use that reference, that Simba analogy one more time. So let's say that, yeah, Shane comes out, he does a promo. In the past, when people leave the WWE and do these promos, it's kind of like hey, why weren't they using me in the right way kind of thing. It would be a little odd. Just, I'm not really sure what Shane's like gripe would be. Like, hey guys, my dad would let me win the Royal Rumble kind of situation. It really wouldn't have the same kind of gravity to it that like, a Keith Lee would saying, how could this company misuse me? But I'm sure that Shane would have any number of, incendiary things to say about his, his family members, his experience in WWE. It could make for an entertaining segment. I'm just really not sure where they would go from there, is the thing. So you have that one just like insane moment of, Shane McMahon on AEW Dynamite. It would pop a rating. It would get everybody talking. But then what happens next? The Dan Lamberts of the world really are kind of like the exception to the rule when it comes to like a mouthpiece actually being able to get a wrestler over. I don't think that, because obviously they're not, given the fact that this company focuses so much on the word wrestling, they're not going to have a 53-year-old Shane McMahon be wrestling. It's obvious that they would have him in one of these kind of like mentor/manager roles. The deal is that like a guy like Dan Lambert, even if you think Dan Lambert's annoying and you show up at every Dynamite in your town just to boo him, there is part of why Dan Lambert has been beneficial to like Scorpio Sky and Ethan Page, is that even the people in the audience that kind of like, like booing Dan Lambert still have this kind of like begrudging respect for him, where you look at his record of success in MMA and you'll look at his like love of like old school classic pro wrestling. And you'll say, even if you think he's annoying, well, this guy does seem to know like how to pick a decent fighter. He gives some credibility. Shane McMahon, I don't really think Shane McMahon gives anybody credibility, frankly. I don't think he would have the same effect. I'm not really even sure what you would have him do. I guess like my initial thought would just be that he would kind of be like an avatar for WWE and would kind of like maybe he could, do a promo where he makes fun of someone who got cut and kind of have it be like this is why you didn't succeed kind of dynamic thing. That in and of itself sounds like a WWE idea though, which is, this is kind of what I'm saying where, okay, so you bring in Shane McMahon. It's a huge moment. It's a crazy moment in wrestling history, obviously. I really don't think it would really take you anywhere. And I think if you just follow this to its logical conclusion, I just don't really think that there's much there, folks. So what do I think about Shane McMahon being Tony's surprise? Well, number one, I don't think that that's what's going to happen. And number two, I really wouldn't be that interested beyond that episode of Dynamite. So there you have it. Thoughts on Shane McMahon, which is just, when I started doing this AEW podcast, now a little bit over a month ago, I would have never expected to be talking about Shane McMahon. But that was the email this week. So thank you, Rick. I hope that answers your question. And yeah, thanks again for the kind words about the music. We'll have some more for you. How about right now? Bum. MJF, 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 MJF. MJF, MJF, MJF. Bum. MJF, 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 MJF. MJF, MJF, MJF. Dun 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 dun. MJF, 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 MJF. MJF, MJF, MJF. That was in the style of the Acafellas. If you didn't get the reference, MJF mentioned being in an acapella group called the Acafellas, and I just thought it would be interesting to hear what it would sound like to have them do his own theme music in celebration of his great victory last week, which I had some folks kind of ask me, like, what did you think after I set the expectations pretty high for that match, and I did kind of like paint myself in a corner somewhat, saying like this match needs to be great, and it needs to be like very clearly a moment of CM Punk is CM Punk again, and MJF is kind of like the new heir apparent. That match absolutely did that, and I do think that this feud is going to continue, but I think, even if they changed plans and didn't keep the feud going, that match was enough to accomplish what I was talking about in terms of those rare moments that can make two people stars. It's novel. It's rare. It doesn't come along that often. Similar, HelloFresh, a deal like this doesn't come along very often. What is HelloFresh? Well, with HelloFresh, you get farm fresh, pre-portioned ingredients and seasonal recipes delivered right to your doorstep. Skip trips to the grocery store. I know I hate going to the grocery store these days. And count on HelloFresh to make home cooking easy, fun, and affordable. And that's why it's America's #1 meal kit. With HelloFresh, you can cut back on the time that you spend in the kitchen so that you can spend it on any other New Year's resolutions you might have, like getting in the gym or doing daily affirmations, or I don't know, maybe you want to get really good at playing checkers. I don't know. Regardless of what's going on, you'll have more time to do that. And don't forget to dessert. Satisfy your sweet tooth with seasonal limited time goodies like Dunkaroos, cookie dough, or vanilla delight cheesecake with your meal kits. For me, HelloFresh, helps me cut down on time. As I'm balancing various aspects of life. My wife and I are starting a little business here in the area where we're going to be starting a piano school with a focus on kind of like differentiated instruction for neurodiverse children. So, kids who, may have not had as much success with other kinds of piano lessons. In any case, HelloFresh has been great for me to kind of like balance these different things that I'm working on. When there's some days that, like today where I have to record a podcast, don't have time for dinner. So that's been great. Please go to HelloFresh.com/VOW16 and use that code VOW16 for up to 16 free meals and 3 free gifts. Again, that's HelloFresh.com/VOW16 and you use code VOW16 for up to 16 free meals and 3 free gifts. HelloFresh, America's #1 meal kit. So tonight's episode of Dynamite, kind of like headlined by this big announcement of Tony Khan and a great title match, should be a great title match with Lance Archer and Adam Page, Hangman Adam Page, which I have heard a couple people, they think I don't talk about Hangman enough. I hear you. I will try to spotlight the Hangman a bit more. So look, you guys kind of have access to the same information that I do. Tony's big announcement tonight. There are some tells here, just that, he does have this little graphic here that says, that this is this same person will have this match here with Isaiah Cassidy to determine, who gets into this Face of the Revolution match. I think it's really funny just how many people on the internet will look at this graphic, and you can see it. You can go on Twitter. You can see this. There's guys out here being like, well, this green guy kind of looks like Karrion Kross. He's like bald and blah, but like that's not what's going on, guys. Like they obviously just made a random green guy for this graphic. Maybe they grabbed Christopher Daniels in the hallway and made him be the person for the graphic, because it kind of does look like him if you look at it. But the point is, we don't got to be taking things so literally. We don't need to be like this is the Zapruder film or something like that, trying to figure out who this is. It's probably Keith Lee, though. Everything I've read, I'm sure everything you all have read as well, seems to indicate that the smart money is on Keith Lee. I would say, it's probably even gotten to the point where it kind of feels obvious that it's Keith Lee. And so that WWE brain does start to wonder, is this too obvious? Do we need to maybe do a little bit of a swerve here? That's what the WWE brains would say. I think for me, if this is Keith Lee and it feels obvious that it's Keith Lee, it can still be a nice moment for the company, frankly. I could see in Tony's mind, having a Keith Lee signing and promoting it as a major moment for the company could be a way to respond to some of the diversity concerns that have come up, through the community. Just that AEW, maybe hasn't been the best at, providing equal opportunity to, wrestlers who are people of color. And so I could, kind of like putting myself in, Tony's mind, just from what I know of him, I could see from his perspective that he thinks that could be a good way to respond to some of those concerns. It certainly fits, treating a Keith Lee debut in the same way as you would treat a Punk, Bryan Danielson, Adam Cole debut. It certainly fits his MO of doing something like, hey, watch me use this guy better than you did, who you just let leave for nothing kind of thing. We've seen AEW do this many times before. I expect if it is Keith Lee, I'm sure a lot of people will be disappointed and they will make that known, as we've seen in the past. It probably won't matter very much if people are disappointed, frankly. And I think that that's something that Tony Khan has realized, that to an extent, it kind of doesn't matter if you overhype something, as long as you're kind of like continuing to deliver to give fans matches like Punk MJF last week, Danielson Page, Danielson Omega. As long as the good wrestling keeps coming, and as long as the fans are getting matches like that, and that Dynamite feels, like an exciting show, I think Tony can continue to get away with this kind of pattern that he's doing, the kind of like over-promise, under-deliver, apologize later thing that other folks have noted too. I do think that Tony does have a bit of a tendency to think that he can get away with anything, frankly, like we saw with that Big Swole tweet, which I won't get into on this episode just since that was a few weeks ago. I think, how you respond to things like this matters. And I think, it is pretty clear that Tony Khan can be a little tone deaf sometimes, and also kind of seems to have this capacity to think that he can get away with anything. I think how you respond to things like this, it says a lot about you. I think, hearing valid concerns from the community, just about, are wrestlers of color getting the same degree of opportunity in AEW? I think hearing those concerns and responding, with putting Jay Lethal on TV more and, making this big Keith Lee debut, if that's really what's happening. If that's your only response to those concerns, that's ultimately going to be insufficient to folks who are bothered about this. And I think, when there's so much of a focus, in terms of how people analyze AEW, there's such a focus on that demo, that 18 to 34 demo. I think especially when you're talking about just that AEW does have such a laser focus on that demo, issues of social justice actually really matter to people in that demo. There's a lot of currency when it comes to those issues and how you respond to them with people in that demo. And so I think, unlike, this thing that Tony Khan does, the kind of like overpromise, underdeliver, apologize later thing, that would be Tony's Brock Lesnar Eat, Sleep, Repeat t-shirt. It would be overpromise, underdeliver, apologize later with periods under all. I mean, that's a great shirt. Could someone please get that on PWTs? Because I would buy it. I think in contrast to that dynamic, I think if AEW continues to respond to these valid concerns of diversity and of equality of opportunity, I think if they continue to think that they can just kind of kick the can down the road with those concerns, and that they think it's adequate, to do this like big Keith Lee debut, maybe put Jay Lethal on TV a little bit more. It's not going to be sufficient. Especially, I won't get into the Jay Lethal stuff, but that was a joke. That was intentional. It's not going to be sufficient to those folks. And so, yeah, putting myself in Tony Khan's shoes, you can get away with some of these things. You can't get away with all of them. And this would be an example of one of those things that you really can't get away with. So, yeah, given the face of the revolution aspect, I fully expect it to be Keith Lee tonight. Again, I think it's funny because you can see people that are like desperately trying to make sense of this like green person on this graphic and figure it out that way. I mean, surprises like that, like this one right here, it's a great example of one of those things that just like makes wrestling fun and worth watching, I think even if it is just Keith Lee and things go exactly how you expect they would go, where, he comes out, he wins his first outing, cuts a little promo, with some jabs against WWE here and there. That's a great moment for the company, honestly, because Keith Lee is super talented, wasn't used correctly in WWE. We kind of all sat and watched it, even, those of us who barely watch WWE. And it is a great moment for AEW if they have Keith Lee come in and, show once again, like, hey, like we know wrestling, we know how to use wrestlers like this. This is another case of WWE just not getting it. Even if it is predictable, I think that's a nice, I think it's a nice moment for the company nonetheless. Regardless if it lives up to everyone's expectations today or not. And again, just that face of the revolution aspect, it kind of seems to make it clear to me that it's someone like Keith Lee or, maybe a Johnny Gargano, as opposed to someone like, Shane McMahon, or I saw someone mention the possibility of Samoa Joe today, who I would really like to see in AEW in some capacity. It's obviously would probably not be in a face of the revolution kind of match. People say this all the time. I did want to talk about this a little bit. The idea of Samoa Joe being in AEW. And people say this all the time, but just that idea that the canon of wrestling as a whole is the canon of AEW, regardless of, things that happened in WWE, Ring of Honor, it's all history in terms of how AEW views its lore. And for me, even if it's just like him smiling and waving on camera a few years from now, Samoa Joe deserves to have a nice moment in AEW, frankly. Especially, that idea of, the canon of wrestling is the canon of AEW. You really can't tell the story of professional wrestling, especially, independent professional wrestling over the last 25 years. You can't tell that story without Samoa Joe. I honestly believe that. Samoa Joe is one of, the like 10 to 20 people that you can say that about. Which is exactly why Samoa Joe deserves to have a run in AEW, honestly. Again, not to throw him under the bus too severely, but if they can find time for Jay Lethal on TV, I think they can find time for Samoa Joe. Because even though he is getting up there, he's proven in his recent WWE work that he still has it. Especially when you think about some of the people that he could get in the ring with, some of the same young people that CM Punk and Adam Cole have worked against. I would love to see it. And I do think that since AEW has embraced this role of like, hey, we're the wrestling company, we care about the history of wrestling, embracing that role comes with a unique responsibility. And that responsibility is to be a good steward to the history of wrestling, which is exactly why bringing Samoa Joe in for something would make a lot of sense. And again, is just something that I would really like to see. Tonight, we also have a nice title match, which, for a first title defense where, typically with a first title defense, you kind of already know what's going to happen. They've really done a great job of making this Lance Archer-Adam Page match feel like a big match. So I'm looking forward to seeing it. There's also this Inner Circle team meeting, which, is obviously one of those things that's going to inspire a lot of really bad dad jokes about work. I can only imagine, as a dad myself, every other dad, the second they saw this, oh yeah, I bet Sammy Guevara probably wishes they just did this on Teams. These jokes write themselves, people. And incidentally, Chris Jericho would be a terrible person on Teams. Can you even imagine? I don't want to think about it. That's all I can find that's been announced so far as of recording this, recording on a Tuesday afternoon. I expect we'll get something about this kind of just atrocious Brandy Rhodes, Dan Lambert thing, which is just a tremendous waste of Dan Lambert and Cody Rhodes, frankly. And is by far my new least favorite ongoing angle in the show. I'm hoping tonight we'll get a little bit more Ricky Starks, who, for me, I feel like he's just as, if not more talented, than a lot of the other kind of pillars, aside from MJF. And I always wonder why we don't hear about Ricky Starks more. I know he's been injured, but he's kind of back in the mix now. And for me, pound for pound, I mentioned this on a last show, maybe at some point I'll do a underrated or underused AEW wrestler list. For me, Ricky Starks is number one with a bullet in terms of people that they're currently underutilizing. I know he's been hurt, and they have done a good job of keeping him around, keeping him on commentary, keeping him in the viewer's mind. So obviously, they realize what they have in Ricky Starks. I guess I'm just getting a little bit impatient that he hasn't been given more to do lately. I would also love to see an update on my favorite ongoing angle, which is Andrade, his ongoing attempts to purchase Darby Allin. I'd like to hear a nice little update on that. And are we kind of getting to the point where maybe we need to kind of throw it out there? Is the Sting partnership still something that's helping Darby Allin at this point? Because, at this point, he feels so far out of the mix just because he's just been kind of being Sting's buddy since losing that Full Gear match against MJF. I would love to see Darby kind of back in the singles mix. And so if that's what this Andrade angle is building to, I think that would be wonderful. I guess my concern is just that this Andrade thing is building to yet another buddy tag match with Sting. So yeah, that'll be interesting to see how that sorts itself out. The word I would use to describe Dynamite tonight is intriguing. That's the word, intriguing. There's a lot of intriguing things going on, from, seeing how this CM Punk MJF angle continues to, seeing what this big announcement is, seeing, if this Page Lance Archer thing will immediately kind of dovetail into this program with Adam Cole, where him and his faction come out after it's over, and will we get some movement in that angle? Again, there's just a lot of intriguing things going on. That's kind of the word of the day. So yeah, I am obviously looking forward to tonight's show, and just the company in general. I think we're really getting into a key stretch for AEW in the next few months. They're going to have to reconcile what to do, with the stars that they've been building this whole time, while continuing to integrate, some of these ex-WWE guys. And I know they've been doing that for months, but, we've seen fairly recently CM Punk, Bryan Danielson, and Adam Cole all lose their first matches. And it's kind of one of those situations where in this dynamic, the second loss is kind of more important or more interesting to me, to see, these guys have all lost once, like who's going to beat them for the second time? How do they navigate going forward now where it's not just like, all right, we've brought you guys in, why don't you put, one or a couple of our guys over? How does that feel, come the second, the third, the fourth time? How will Punk, Danielson, Cole, how will they respond, to that second loss? And I would throw Malachi Black in there, who's I know he lost against Cody, but it's kind of another situation where, to navigate these second, third, fourth losses of these WWE acquisitions, I think is just it's a key moment for the company going forward. Just where do they go from here, and how do you strike that balance between, protecting these guys, Punk, Danielson, Cole, which you do need to protect to some degree, but protecting those guys while building your stars and building the company at large. That's really where things come down to brass tacks, and we've seen other companies get to this point or close to it. Probably not the same success, but at least the same kind of like longevity in terms of, the third year of a company like this. And most companies don't make it past this little patch that AEW is coming over this year and next year in terms of, what do you do with these stars that you've built? How do you then go and make even more new stars? And how do you keep these kind of recent acquisitions happy? That's the business of wrestling, of creative work in wrestling. And again, the word is intriguing to see kind of how these things resolve themselves. This is kind of the difficult third act of AEW is kind of what they're coming up on here. I have a lot of faith in the company and the people involved, and I'm interested to see how things go. I do have a lot of faith in the people involved, people like Evil Uno. That's right, folks. This week's Words of Wisdom go to Evil Uno, who I saw was very excited about his new action figure. Well, Evil Uno, this week's Words of Wisdom are for you, and they are just that having an action figure of yourself is one thing, but what about having two action figures of yourself? Where does it stop? What about if you are like He-Man and you have a battle cat that you can also ride on? Have you thought about that? Where does it stop? Where can you finally say, this is me, I'm Evil Uno, and I've